to the topic tonight. Does anybody remember what tonight's topic is? The fight to be right. So the last time we talked about the fight to be right, we said it was ego food, not egg food. Ego food. Who's the one who thought it was egg? Was it ego? Okay, bad. Ego food, not ego. Ego food. We discussed the idea that when we fight to be right, we usually make another person wrong. When we fight to be right, it's really about me. When we fight to be right, sometimes we'll die for the cause just to be right. We cause a lot of harm and injury whenever we fight to be right. We showed a couple examples. We talked about and showed Benny's Choice. Remember the movie from Omega 1, Benny's Choice? We showed that and talked about how each one of them fought for their position. We also showed you the Dr. Seuss movie, the Zacks, the North going and the South going Zacks, and how they met in the middle and neither one of them would move. And so here's two people stubborn who refused to move on. I also made the commitment I wasn't going to make fun of my family anymore, so I'm continuing that tonight. I'm not making fun of my family anymore. So tonight's the fight to be right. I originally thought about bringing up throughout history the people who have fought to be right and have made a contribution. Because there is a positive aspect to fighting to be right. But I figure, and I discovered, most people correlate or connect back to the fight to be right for the ego than they do for a grander picture. So I wanted to just reiterate that before I moved forward. When it comes to fighting to be right, I found this great quote. It said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Which I thought that was a nice little tie on that. And that's true. When we fight to be right, it's really about me. Most of us, when we fight to be right, it's really about me. I went to the dictionary. I was looking about, let me just bring this up. This is very funny. So there's lots of books out there, obviously. You know, there's lots and lots of books and information there is on win-win situations, and like in the coaching industry, there's tons of books on how to be a good coach and the activities that you can do and whatnot. So I pulled this book off of George's shelf. I just walked in there and saw this, and the title is The Power of Being Nice. That's the title. And then the subtitle is How to Negotiate So Everybody Wins. And then the remainder part of the sentence says, especially you. So that's really not a win-win scenario. But that's how a lot of people end up doing it. They start out with the idea of win-win, but they make sure they get theirs. And that's what they hang on to. I had a conversation with a client today. She was upset because there's a manager who's been in a position for about a year now. He's not a leader. He's not an effective leader. He's really good at being nice. He's everyone's friend, and he's afraid to be confrontive. Well, in the industry, in a business industry, as a leader, you have to be able to hold people accountable. He doesn't want to. He wants to be everyone's friend. So he's getting walked over left and right. So because this man doesn't really report to her, but is involved in her job, she took him aside and said, here, this is what you need to do, and so, and if you want to find this person, like his guys aren't even working anymore. They're off chit-chatting in the cafeteria, or they're off at somebody else's department, so they're never really doing what they're supposed to be doing. So essentially, they're getting paid to hang out, is what it boils down to. So she told him, you know, if you want to find this guy, go here, here, and here. Well, he walks up to the guy and says, so-and-so told me that you're not doing your job, and blamed the woman who's trying to help him. Naturally, the guy got upset with her, and they start getting into a big, and meanwhile, the manager, who doesn't want to be tough, is sitting on the sidelines. Oh, guess that's not happening to me. But he's not being strong, so he's not benefiting from this. Now, of course, she eventually will benefit if she can rise above and not react to this. She's just absolutely livid with the manager who's not stepping up. So I was thinking about the idea of being right. You see, she has a picture of how he should be. It's not who he is, but she has a picture of how he should be. And in her mind, it makes sense to go to him and say, you got to do this, 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 and this, because it worked for her. It may not work for him. And the comment that I heard coming back to me was, he used to be a very violent, fearful manager, and he went the opposite side, and he was grateful that he's not that way. So he's just gone from one extreme to the other. Neither one of them is beneficial. Like, he has to find his medium. But if you understand patience, you understand that eventually he'll fall back into that. Like the one extreme isn't going to work for him either, and eventually he'll fall back at his own time. Sometimes with our need to have our expectations met, our pictures created, we force people to do things that it's not in their best interest, or they're not ready to get to. Those of you who don't know about the story, do we still have Zora the Greek in the? So there's a great story. Gosh, we used to use this in Omega years and years ago. It's a story of a gentleman who one morning he went out in his backyard, and there was a cocoon. And just as the sun was rising, the cocoon was opening, and a butterfly was trying to struggle to get through. Well, he sat with his morning coffee and waited, and then he got impatient. And he started breathing on the cocoon to help the cocoon open more. So the more he breathed, the wider the cocoon got, and the butterfly began to emerge. Well, then, what happened is something he never expected. When the cocoon fully opened, the butterfly fell out, and he held it in his hand. And what he discovered is, because of his impatience, that butterfly came out too soon. It needed to have the struggle to break through the cocoon to strengthen its wings. Since it didn't have that struggle, it couldn't open its wings. And since it couldn't open its wings, it couldn't fly or breathe naturally, so within a matter of moments, it died in his hand. And he said that's the greatest weight he's ever carried, was that little body in his hands. Because of his own impatience, his own timing, he had to be right. I want it to be my way. It caused the death of this. Now, it's just an insect. I get that. But on the grand scheme of things, think about this. How often do we have an agenda? And our agenda is mostly based upon what I want, not what you want. So, when it comes to being right, I started to think about the idea of playing games. Now, I said I wasn't going to pick on my family, so this is kind of another Italian family that I'm going to mention that doesn't live in New York, they live in New Jersey. So, this family, when they play games, the person who runs the family doesn't like to lose. So in this game, they would cheat. And so, let's say, Monopoly, and you roll the dice and count off. Now, let's say you're supposed to roll the dice and count off, and you would end up in jail. Well, this person would just go 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I didn't go there. And if you didn't catch them, it was okay. Their rule was, if you don't get caught, it's acceptable to cheat. So I grew up, people in the family grew up thinking it was okay to cheat, as long as you didn't get caught. Now, on the flip side of that, being children who see the consequences of that, they don't like playing with this person because they never win. It's always a loss. So imagine, if you will, a family that gets tired of playing games with each other because one person is always winning because they ensure that everyone's going to lose because they have to win at all costs. Now, thinking of that, when it comes to games, I was thinking winning is just like fighting to be right. I want to win. And most of us have that feeling when we play. How many people here are gamblers? Anybody in here a gambler? All right, so we go gambling. You know when you gamble and you win. Let's say you win the first time. So blackjack. Well, let me go to this. When I was in college, this is not a lie, when I was in college, one of my math classes was called casino gambling because it was all about statistics. I am not kidding. I got taught how to gamble in college as a class. So they taught us blackjack, they taught us craps, they taught us roulette, the one-armed bandits. They did everything. We learned every single game, and we learned the statistics. Blackjack is by far the greatest statistic of anybody who's going to gamble. That's the best deal. Now, this is before Texas Hold'em thing came out, so really, this is before that. I don't know what the statistics would be on that now, but blackjack was your safest bet to play. And the teacher actually even gave us a card that showed us, when a hand is shown here, this is the probability that the dealer would have this, so odds are to fold or to stay or to hit. Like, I had one of those cards. As a matter of fact, in this class, I broke the bank in the classroom playing craps. They gave us all the statistics of that too. I can't remember for the life of me what it's like now because, I'm sure I wasn't quite So I was like, do I want to say that? It was my college years. You're not really clear every time you go to class in New Jersey. So I don't remember. I really don't remember. The last time I went to Vegas, I could not recall what I was supposed to do in craps. I did very well in blackjack, but not in craps. But anyway, you know what it's like when you win and you get that exhilaration and you want to bet again because you want that exhilaration. And then let's say you win 3 hands. I have a rule in blackjack: if you lose 3 hands in a row, stop. That's just my rule. So let's say you're winning and you have 1 hand and then you lose. Oh, let me try it again, and then you lose again. Let me try again, and then you lose again. Now, if you don't have that rule, you watch people spend mortgages trying to get that win back. You know, just one more time, just one more time. George used to tell the story of people, he knew people that would steal from the company and go to Vegas with the intention, I'm not stealing, I'm borrowing. And if I make enough money, I'll repay them. And apparently 1 or 2 times it worked, so they felt like it was a good enough formula, but then they started stealing more than what they needed, and it wasn't working. So we can get into trouble when it comes to addictions. We could just say that. We gotta have that next win. Gotta have that next win, especially with gambling. I was thinking of solitaire. You know, the statistic is that on the average work week, the employees play solitaire 14 to 16 hours of work time playing solitaire. When solitaire first came out, that was the average work week. 14 to 16 hours they're getting paid to play a game. That boggles my mind, but it's what they do. And I think I did this a couple months ago. We were talking about the internet, how people were on the internet surfing and investing and checking on vacations while they're supposed to be working. So, you know, there's a fine line of how we can monitor individuals. There was even that one thing, how to do it without getting caught. So back to the idea of winning. When it comes to winning, playing a game, winning, I equated it to fighting to be right. So I'm going to start talking about winning, but it's still along the theory of fighting to be right. What I want you to do is all have this experience of what it's like to win. I know you know what it feels like to win, but just play with me today, all right? So find somebody you want to work with. I want to have couples, so everyone's got to match up as a couple. So I got an odd person here. Michael, you want to come up here? Yep. Here we go. We got coming up here. Now, it would be helpful if you had a chair in between you, but if you don't, not a big deal. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Get back to your partner, whoever you want to talk to, and talk about what it's like when you're playing the game. How do you feel when you win? How do you feel when you're losing? Go ahead and have your attention. How many people in here liked winning? How many people in here liked losing? Most people like the feeling of when you win. You get that little exhilaration. And we turned around and saw Susan and Michael, right? They were cracking up, laughing, and getting all giddy because you're having fun and you like that feeling of winning. The more you win, how do you think you'll feel? Excited. The more you lose, how do you think you'll feel? Depressed, rejected, not even want to participate anymore. Now, of course, if I had the light bulb up here, I could just use that as an illustration. The more I win, the brighter my light bulb is. The more I lose, the more diminished my light is. I am affected by not having that win in my life. Now, let's flip this over to, the more you win over another person, how do you feel?
Over a person?
The more you win in a conversation or in a situation, how do you feel?
I feel good.
You feel good. We feel good when we win a conversation, when we win an argument, when we're proven right. No, this was here. No, this was here. No, see, I was right. We feel good. Vindicated. I was right. How does the person feel when they're losing? Frustrated, diminished, and they may even want to get into a conversation with you anymore because they're sick and tired of always being wrong. So when it comes to that, just think about the winning and the losing. It's the same thing about being right and being wrong. When you're striving to win at all costs, what's it doing to the people that you're winning over? Most of the time we don't think of that because we're thinking, no, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. Ooh, Mark just left so I can say something. So here we are. And we're driving somewhere. And I forgot what it was, but I said something about, no, this is where we were supposed to go. And he was, no, we did that already. And I know I'm right. But I didn't say that. I remained quiet. And then after about 10 minutes, I'm like, no, wait. No, you're right, that's right. You know, instead of going, duh, or I told you, I said, oh yeah, okay, thanks. Like, there's no need to rub it in. But have you had those conversations where you know you're right, and they're like, no, this is the way it is? I mean, that's not what he did. But, you know, people can do that. No, listen, they'll just give you a whole list of this is why it is the way it is. And then 10 minutes later, they go, oh. So I had a very funny story. I'll tell you this one. Years ago, when George was running Papago Printing, it was in this building, and sometimes he would deliver some of the jobs to the customers if he knew the clients. And his nephew had ordered a bunch of items to be printed. So we had driven out there, and it was way over on Estrella Mountain area, I mean, but further past that, it's like the other side of the world for me. So George asked if I would drive, so we went out there to go get the specs and stuff. So we're driving out there, and it's a long drive. Now, I have to go pee. George has to go pee. Okay, well, there's no bathrooms, there's nothing. We're in the desert. So I'm like, oh, look, there's a tree. There's a bunch of trees over there with a little house. So I pull over, and it was like a rundown kind of house thing, and I've been camping, go pee when you got to. So we went outside. Look, she's like, oh my God. Wait, the story gets funnier. So we go to our prospective trees and go pee and go about our business. A week later, see, he's dead, I can tell the story. A week later now, we have to drive the product out to his nephew's house. It just so happens, as we're driving, we're on the same road, and George goes, oh look, there's the tree that we peed behind. And I went, no, it's not. And he went, what are you talking about? Don't you think I know what kind of tree I peed behind? Of course it's the tree I peed behind. And he's in the passenger seat. Now, I was driving, so I had a better idea because I knew where I pulled off. And I said, no, it's not. Where we went to pee was there was two trees and a little, no. And he started getting really adamant. And then he goes, what do you think I am, a stupid duh? And just as he's about to say dummy, we passed the place that we peed, and he recognized it. So in mid-sentence, he said, what do you think I am, a stupid duh? And then he just looked out the window and looked back at me. His face was beet red, and then he busted out laughing. That was like one of our favorite jokes for the next 5 years. What do you think I am, a stupid duh? And people will be like, what are you talking about? Never mind, private joke. But that was a good picture of, I'm George Adair. How dare you tell me I don't know where I peed? I know where I peed. It was just, I wish I could have recorded the conversation because it was truly funny. We're arguing over a place to pee. Over the grand scheme thing, it's kind of funny. But that's how we get sometimes. When we're fighting for our right, it doesn't matter if it's the last Oreo cookie in the box. We will fight just so we can be right. We'll fight no matter what. The topic could be the stupidest topic in the world. Now, what's sad about this is sometimes people let friendships go because they need to be right. They walk away from relationships because they need to be right. They walk away from jobs because they need to be right. The cost sometimes, or the price, may not be worth the title of being right. Now, George talked a lot about that, about conceiving, and he used to say that it's not about the product, it's about the person. So whenever you're working with somebody, it's not about your project, it's about the person in this organization. We're filled with volunteers, and yet through the years, I've heard many people complain, this person's not doing that, this person, especially in the early years when I was here. People would be complaining about each other, and George would scratch his head and said, why are you complaining about a volunteer? Someone's here voluntarily of their own time, free will. It's not about the project, it's about the person. And those of you who actually have met him and worked with him, you'll know that was his demeanor. Very compassionate, he never raised his voice, never got angry at any volunteer. So the mindset that George put in place was it wasn't about winning. That's also the reason why Omega Vector doesn't charge and will remain that way. Because it's not about the income. It's not about our validity doesn't mean how much money we have. It's by how many people find this work valuable. That's really what the point of Omega is to make a contribution to humanity, not to fill our pockets. So, back to the idea of winning and the fighting to be right. I have here, I went to the dictionary, it says for a sore loser, a competitor who exhibits poor sportsmanship after losing a game or a contest is often called a sore loser. Sore loser behavior includes blaming others, not accepting responsibility for personal actions, reacting to the loss in an immature or improper fashion, making excuses for the defeat, citing unfavorable conditions, or other petty issues that show up, just so you can feel better about yourself. Now, I happen to have a very recent event that occurred. I told you that Joseph, Mark's son, is very big into reading. He was in the Battle of the Books, and I may have told the story already. So he was in the Battle of the Books, made it all the way to the finals, and then there was like a 4-way tie. He didn't get one answer wrong. So there's 4 teams that didn't get one answer wrong. So then this is where it gets exciting, because it's the battle between each team. It's a 1 question, you're out now. So you have to get all the questions right. He's doing good, then he gets 1 wrong. And then he gets knocked out. So then they decide first, second, and third, and he was the 4th place. So that's the loser, which is very funny, because that will tie you to the story I'll tell you about my family. Anyway, when he ends up losing and the whole thing's over, he starts crying and bawling. Now, I understand. I've been around kids who lose, and they're not accustomed to losing, so he doesn't handle defeat very well. He's pretty competitive. And then when I get to him, they got that one wrong. They favored the other person. Then he starts blaming. And then he starts finding fault with the system. Then the teachers weren't being fair. They were giving him the hardest questions, and the other ones had the easiest, And it was funny to sit there and watch this unfold, knowing that he's doing everything he can to rationalize the loss, instead of just accepting the loss and being grateful that somebody else won. And the achievement, he made it all the way to the finals and didn't get 1 question wrong out of all the questions. That's phenomenal. You'll always have a winner, you'll always have a loser. Super Bowl, there will always be somebody winning and somebody losing. But he handled it in such an immature way. Well, of course, he's a child. That's the way it should. Well, most children go through that. So, back to the idea now of the board games that I played with my siblings. We like to play with each other and our parents. So, in our family, I have 3 siblings, so we would play games for hours. Now, board games, we didn't have computers back then, okay? Pong was the first electronic game. And those, you remember Pong? The stupid thing that slides up and down, and you just move your thing to make sure that the thing doesn't bounce in. That's all you have control of, is a slider going up and down, like tennis is what it was like. And that was when I was going into junior high school. That's when that first came out. So no computer games. We had either outside or board games. And since there were 4 of us, we could keep ourselves pretty much entertained, and we tried to play games where all 4 of us could play. So we played Monopoly, Trouble, Life, Clue. We played those games, and sometimes we played for hours the same game and have our own little competition. And it would always be the person who won, first place, the second person, the second runner-up, second place, runner-up, third place, nice mention. 4th place was always called the loser. And so if you came in second or third, you could always say, well, at least I wasn't a loser, and rubbing it so nobody wanted 4th place. So anytime we were playing and we knew somebody was going to get to 4th, let's play again. Let's play again. Have you ever had that one? Let's play again. Listen, 7 hours later. You win, just take it. But that's what we would do. The loser was the uncoveted position. Nobody wanted to be a loser. It's okay to be second and third, and if you won, woo! Now, playing games like that, then we went over to Pong. The first thing I became aware of is in Pong, it really was winner or loser. You couldn't cheat because it's right there, so we kind of like that aspect that you couldn't cheat. But you couldn't also assist somebody without making it an obvious loss. In Monopoly, if we're playing and we wanted to make it go a little bit longer, and let's say my brother doesn't have any money and lands on my park place, I could renegotiate. I could say, don't pay the mortgage, and the next time I land on your properties for 2 times, I won't have to pay. Okay, and we can still play. So we can ensure, not a guaranteed loss or win, but we can continue to play. The game wouldn't end. In Pong, that wasn't possible. You have a definite winner and a definite loser, and that's it. So when the electronics games started to being introduced, it really defined winning and losing. And I think that's where sportsmanship started to dissipate, because it was a win and a lose. That's it. End of story. No compassion, doesn't matter, end of story. Now, when I look at the games nowadays, I'm shocked. Can I say that again? I'm just shocked. Everything's about blowing something up. I bought Joseph for being in the Battle of the Books of Legos. Legos! How great is that? They have little Legos and they go to little towns. That's nice. It's Legos blowing people up and knocking them off the top of buildings. I'm like, what the? They have an Uzi out of Legos. You have an Uzi. What? But that's the way the games are today. Everyone's blowing everybody else up. But in that aspect, even in that, you can play with each other and still try to defeat each other. And this is how I talked to another client today, and he said, that unfortunately that's how his son relates to his friends. They don't go outside playing anymore. They're on the internet and they're playing with each other in their own homes. That's how they connect with each other. Instead of being out interactive, they're connecting on the computer. It's a whole different generation, truly a different generation. We're a dying breed. I'll just say I'm a dying breed. When it comes back to the winning and the losing in the computerized games, I'll go back to solitaire because I mentioned that. This is an intriguing game because you're playing with yourself. You're playing against yourself. There's nobody to beat. Well, the computer maybe, but it's up to you. So the hours that you play solitaire, I'll just play one more time. Let me just play one more time. Who are you talking to, first of all? Oh, let me just do one more time. Oh, that's me. And then, what is the reward you get? So you won solitaire 5 times in a row. Okay. Switch to another game. So I have a solitaire game that comes and goes on my phone every once in a while. Mark will laugh at me because I'll delete it. And then I'll get bored one day and I'll just turn it and put it back on and play it for a couple of hours. And then I'll delete it again because I wasted a couple of hours. And so it's deleted, undeleted constantly on. So I don't even have to put the password on my phone anymore. I just hit, download. It goes right to it because it knows I'm going to delete it probably in another 2 hours. But playing that game, I know that as I'm doing it, there's no reward. I'm feeling a little excited when I get, I've gotten pretty good now. I can win and keep playing over and over again. And so you hit the replay. So it's not just, because when you play solitaire with regular cards, you can't do a replay because their cards are all already dealt out. But on a computer, you got that replay button and you can play that thing over and over until you finally win. Sorry, did I do that a little aggressively? But that's how it is sometimes. Replay. Oh, forget it, delete the game. Download it again. Replay. And most of the time, I'll figure out a way to win. Or sometimes, of course, when it lays out and there's no possible win, just, next game, that doesn't count. I couldn't make a move, it didn't count. So we rationalize. I should just say sorry. I rationalize to continue on playing. Well, I was thinking about this the other day on how many hours is spent playing a game on solitaire. What contribution does it make? Well, I know it's relaxing. For me, it's relaxing. I take a break from the kids and just take a break. If I'm exhausted and I just got done doing a training and I don't feel like reading, just something. And I know when I play solitaire, it's sedentary, so I get tired. And so I found that this is a good way for me to get to sleep because I don't sleep very well. But if I play solitaire, eventually I'll start to fall asleep. Unless I'm not winning. Replay. And this actually started when I was taking care of George. I don't want to blame George, but it really did start when I was taking care of George. Sometimes I couldn't sleep at night, so I'd sit there and my eyes were too tired to read, but I would just play solitaire. And 2, 3 in the morning, I'll just keep hitting replay. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Ah! But that's how we can get lost when it comes to winning and losing. So back to the idea of winning. So I'm playing solitaire. What's my contribution? Nothing. Sometimes when I get done playing solitaire and after I've deleted it off of my phone, I sit and think, what have I learned? What have I wasted? How much time have I just spent? What could I have done? If you know me, I have a list of things that need to be done. I just wasted an hour or 2 playing solitaire. What contribution was that? So this made me think about the contribution of winning. When I win, is there truly a contribution? So I went to the sports field. I grew up as an athlete. I went to the idea of winning. Olympics is the first thing that I can think of for sports, for competition. The Olympics now, actually, the ancient Olympics, they date back as far as 776 BC. 700 years before Jesus, they were having competitions. Now, that's amazing to me. Now, it has not been consistent or consecutive years. There have been times where the Olympics died out, and then they started back up again, and then it died out again, and then in the early 1800s they started it, and it faded away, and then back in the early 1900s it started back up, and it's been pretty strong since the 1900s, although I have a feeling it's going to start to die down soon, because interest seems to be not as intense as it was back when I was growing up. But in the Olympic Games, you have, the very first Olympic Games was an introduction of competition of sports between the cities and states of Greece. It was just between one country, Greece, but it was also a religious ceremony as well. So there would be sacrifices made to Zeus or to Athena. So to the Greek gods, they would be having sacrifices after a competition. Now, I don't know if they sacrificed the loser, but there would be some form of sacrifice. So it would be considered a ritual. Now, eventually, I read somewhere, and I don't remember who it was. I think it was when the Romans were in charge and the Crusades were going on. They banned the Olympics because they didn't want it to be the rituals to the gods. There's only one god now. So anyway, it started out as competition and religious. So it was put together. Now it's all about competition. And I was thinking about all of the hundreds of thousands of gold, silver, and bronze medals that have been awarded. There's got to be hundreds of thousands of people who have awards throughout history. Then my mind went to Michael Phelps. This summer, Michael Phelps broke records left and right. Those of you who don't know him, he is a swimmer. He's the most decorated Olympian of all time. I actually got the numbers for this one. He's won 22 medals. 18 gold medals, 2 silver, and 2 bronze. 18 gold medals. Phenomenal. He has won gold medals in individual events, 11, so he has the record for that. He's had Olympic medals in an individual event for a male, 13, he has the record for that. In winning 8 gold medals at the 2008 Beijing Awards, which has never happened, so he won 8 gold medals in one Olympic game session. He took the record for the most first-place finishes at any single Olympics Games. 5 of his victories were in individual events, tying the single-game record. In 2012, in the Summer Olympics, he won 4 gold medals and 2 silver medals, making him the most successful athlete of the Games for the 3rd Olympics in a row. So he actually won 3 years and 3 Olympic Games in a row, and that's 4 years apart. So for 12 years, he held the records. That's pretty good. So here is Michael Phelps. Not arguable, unarguable, he is an Olympian athlete. If you think about athlete, you've got Michael Phelps, all the awards that he has. So no one can argue his athletic ability. 100 years from now, people might still remember his name. 1,000 years from now, his name might be found along a list of extraordinary athletes. 1,000 years from now. But the question was, what has he won? Truly, what has he won? What contribution has he made? Now, I'm not trying to diss Michael Phelps. Truly a great athlete, made remarkable, rising above human limitations. That's good. But in the grand scheme of things, what has he done for humanity? When we think about this, feeling victorious may only last for a little while, but inspiring others, that changes lives. So if he becomes an inspiration to other people, then he's made a contribution. But if he makes it all just about him, it's only going to last for a little while and he'll fade and fizzle into the distance, into the dark. If he doesn't use his name for contribution to humanity, he'll just become another statistic. Eventually, he'll just be a statistic. Then I thought about this. This is going to be funny. So anybody know the TV show Bones? Does anybody see this? I love this show because everybody's a brilliant, intelligent human being. They use their minds, well, with computers, but they're intelligent human beings. So Bones and Booth is her boyfriend, he is struggling because his mother shows up. It's this episode, his mother shows up and suddenly she just shows up and she's got some news. So Booth's struggling with the news. Booth is very religious, Bones is not. So she's an anthropologist, is that what she's a forensic anthropologist. Doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in heaven or hell, it's just facts. There's no facts to prove it, it doesn't exist. That's how she is, very logical. Makes me think of my brothers. I had to say that for you. Okay, so in this episode, Bones looks at her partner and says, well, in the Jesus myth, because she calls it a Jesus myth, because there's no such thing as religion, so it's a myth. In the Jesus myth, now this offends him because it really happened. Well, she wasn't there. She says, in the Jesus myth, it can't be confirmed. She says, turning water to wine, raising the dead, walking on water, all of these are scientifically impossible. But the reason why the Jesus myth exists is because of forgiveness. That's one of the things Jesus taught, and that's why the myth still exists. And so she was trying to use that for Booth to implement forgiveness to his mom. So she went with the religious aspect of that. It's about forgiveness. Now, knowing that this is just a TV show, I understand that, but the concept is very valuable. The miracles might dazzle us, but it's the teachings that transform us. The miracles might capture our attention and glisten. We might go, ooh, look how pretty, but it won't change me. It's the teachings that do. It's the contributions that individuals make that do capture our attention. The magicians today, I was thinking about the magicians today. Who's the dude who levitates himself? And
Chris Angel?
yeah, Chris Angel. You got Chris Angel. He's a little scary. And then you got the silent guy, the big tall guy. They do magician, Penn and Teller. I think that's yeah. So there's a bunch of magicians around. Now they can be all explained, but they capture our attention. In the long run, what contribution do they make? Again, that's where I'm going for the long run. I want to bring another person, Steve Irwin. Remember Steve Irwin? The crocodile man, the crocodile hunter. So Steve Irwin, famous icon, a daredevil, a modern day Tarzan. I mean, almost overnight, worldwide attention. He's got the heart of everyone. Because he wasn't arrogant, he wasn't boisterous. What was the one thing he pushed? Just not how he died. His topic was always about conservation. Always about the conservation. Much of the money that he earned went back into buying land on the zoo to preserve Australia and preserve the conservation, preserve the animals. That was his talk. It was always about conservation, conservation, conservation. So his love of animals was very, very apparent. In any interview that I've ever seen with him, it was never about him. Never about him. He talked about his daughter, talked about his family, but it was never about Steve, look how wonderful I am. He would talk about the animals all the time. Animals, animals, conservation, conservation. In 2001, he was awarded the Centennial Medal by the Australian government for his service to global conservation and Australian tourism. Obviously, the tourism went up when he started his TV show. 2004, he was recognized as the Tourism Export of the Year, and before his death, he was named to be an adjunct professor at Queensland School of. He was going to be a professor, so honorary. He was an honorary professor. Now, in 2007, Rwanda named a gorilla after him. So there's a gorilla named Steve Irwin right now. That's funny. 2007, the state of the place in India named a crocodile rehabilitation center after him as well. Now, obviously, Steve Irwin can't hold a candle to Michael Phelps with the awards, but the contribution that he's made far outweighs Michael Phelps. Far outweighs Michael Phelps. It would appear that when Steve Irwin, here's something that this is intriguing. So here's Steve Irwin. In 2003, he was filming a documentary on sea lions off the coast of Baja, California. When his boat, the radio on the boat, heard that there's 2 scuba divers that are missing, he stopped production. Called it to a halt, and went into the direction and aided in the search and rescue of these 2 scuba divers. So they searched for 2 days, and he found one of the scuba divers. He found one of them, the other one ended up being dead. But this was what was important, is that for Steve Irwin, it wasn't about making the money. Somebody's life's in danger, go now. Forget about the production, go now. He used all of his resources to help find that scuba diver. Had he not joined in, who knows if they would have found him. So that was his contribution. The other thing that he did, this is intriguing, that in 1997, he was on a fishing trip with his father. He discovered a new species of turtle. In 1997, we're discovering a new life form? Like, that's amazing to me. So he got to name it. He named it in honor of his family, so he calls it Irwin's Turtle, or it's actually called Elsie Irwini, but it means Irwin's Turtle. And then he also discovered, in 2009, he discovered a land-breeding snail that he called Crikey Steve Irwini. Crikey Stevie Irwini. Remember how he used to say crikey all the time? Crikey! So he named this snail. So there's a contribution right there. 2 species are now named after this individual who had a passion and love for animals. So his spot of winning wasn't winning for him, it was winning for the animals, winning for conservation, winning to make this planet a better planet. I remember one time I saw a documentary with him, and in this documentary, it's actually a very beautiful documentary, the reporter asked him what would be his greatest regret, and he said that he was the most afraid that he was going to die without his daughter, before his daughter grew up, because he didn't want his daughter to grow up without a daddy. That was his biggest thing. He didn't want his daughter to grow up without a daddy. I think this was aired right after he passed away. And he started crying over that. He was, really completely moved because of anything, he didn't want his daughter to grow up without a dad. And that's ended up happening, like within 6 months of that documentary. He was dead and she grew up without a dad. But in the whole entire thing, there were several times where he would come to tears. And he wasn't ashamed of it. He wouldn't sit there and say, he just flat out would just cry. He would talk about how the planet Earth is dying and we need to do more to keep our species alive. We need to take care of the planet. We need to take care of the animals. We need to be mindful of our resources. And he really was a conservationist. But he wasn't one of those political activists that shove it down your throat, win at all cost. He just did it in his own small little way. In his own small little world, he made a contribution. Somebody got hold of it and broadcast it, which is great. He made a greater contribution. So, when I think about Steve Irwin, and I compare him to Michael Phelps, again, no diss to Michael Phelps, I'm sure he is doing a great job, or whatever he's doing, if he is taking his name, to make a contribution for others. So, this made me think more, when I'm winning for myself, I'm the only one who wins. But when I win or fight to be right for others, everybody wins. So when I'm in the fight for me, the victory is all I get. But when I'm in the fight for others, everybody has a victory. Now, one of the things that I talk about in my coaching, with my coaching clients, we talk about the idea that people who are the lower employees, the lower meaning the ones who don't really have a consciousness of other than just what's in front of them, like just get this part done, where a manager is more aware of the floor, and then a supervisor is aware of several different areas, and then of course above them you've got the one who's worried about the company. So the higher you go in a hierarchy, the more responsibility you have, the more awareness you have to have. It's just like climbing a mountain. On the lower levels of the mountain, you can only see as far as the first obstacle before you. But the higher you go, the greater your vision is. And eventually when you get to the top, the vision is all around. It also has great responsibility there too. So on the lower levels of the mountain, people fight for their rights. I want time off. I want to be comfortable. I want this because so-and-so has that. Jealousy, comparison comes into play. You got to do this and I did it. How come you get to take off and I can't? How come you have a 15-minute longer lunch break than I did? I mean, you just like bitty. So I deal with managers have to deal with those kind of employees where it's just single focus, me. And then you've got the managers who struggle with those employees, but then they also have to appease the ones above them, so they kind of get back and forth. We're being a babysitter, but then they're also dealing, how do we make a better product here, so on and so forth. When I thought about this, I thought about the people who fight, because then you have people who take sides. Well, so-and-so left 15 minutes early. What do you think about that? And then they start getting, groups together, and then this group doesn't like this group, and then this group won't play nice with that group. So, when they call me in and say, stop it, or I'll bury you alive in a box. Sorry. Those of you who don't know that, you'll know about it, and I'll make it too. So, when it comes to the fighting and the cattiness, it's because they're fighting for themselves. But then you've got examples of people like Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks refused to move because she was exhausted. But she wasn't just exhausted that day. She was exhausted of a life of being pushed back, of being told that she isn't as valuable as anyone else, of a lifetime of we don't have equality. So on that day that she refused to move, it wasn't just for her. She started a movement. So it may have been for her at that time where she just had enough, but it wasn't just enough for her. She recognized there had to be a change. In the planet, there had to be a change. In our system, there had to be a change. So she fought. I don't know how much she fought. I did the research on her a while ago, and I have not, I didn't look it back up again when I came to do this. But of course, you could just think about Martin Luther King. Same thing. Joseph Mandela. How many years did he spend in jail? Because he believed in fighting against apartheid. The founding fathers of this country, they fought. Not just so they could be successful businessmen, they were already successful businessmen. What did the founding fathers fight for? Freedom. Freedom, the freedom that we have today, freedom of speech, freedom. The founding fathers fought for freedom, so it was for everyone, not just for themselves. So when it comes to fighting and fighting for our rights, it would be more about what do I get or what is the contribution that I can make. Each one of these people had a greater picture in mind. It wasn't just for the advancement of themselves, it was for the advancement of a group, a collection of a society or a family or a community, but it was for something greater than themselves. Now, what I'd like you to do is I'm going to have you have a conversation with your buddy, and I want you to have a conversation with them. I just said that twice, didn't I? Please talk to them about what you fight for. Do you fight for things for you, or do you fight for things for others? And what are the outcomes? When you fight for something for yourself, what do you get? And when you fight for something for others. Now, I know the outcomes may seem obvious, but just really take a good look right now and think about what's the last thing you fought for, and was it worth it? So have a conversation with your buddy about the things that you fight for. All right, so I wanted you to have a good look at the things that we fight for and the outcomes that we have when we fight for things. I was thinking something as simple as fighting for attention. I saw, when I got back from my honeymoon, the dog and the two cats. It's very funny. Whenever room I go in, they're both in there. And if I call one, the other two push the other one out of the way just to get the attention. Now that's very animalistic, obviously, but it's a good picture of wanting to get your attention. Grandchildren do the same thing. I've had my grandchildren push another one off my lap so that they can sit on my lap, as if they actually think I'm going to let them because they're pushing another one, but they will do things like that. Kids will fight for parents' attentions. I was thinking about how sometimes fighting can be very beneficial. In the most recent, my mind just went blank. I was thinking of the most recent, I don't want to get political, but the gun laws, the gun law that they're trying to pass. So now they're showing commercials with parents of people who died in the Colorado shooting and, fight to take the guns back. So they're going emotional now to try to get the emotions to get the guns laws passed. Again, I don't want to get political, but let's look at politics. There's, if we just look at the Democrats and Republicans, a perfect illustration of people who are fighting and don't accomplish anything, but they get paid. Essentially, we're paying them to fight, and we don't know what the outcomes are ever going to be. And usually gets changed the next time somebody gets into office anyway, so I'm lost when it comes to the political system. George always used to say, stay away from politics and religion. So when I think about the things that we fight for, but you could even look at the religious aspect, the Crusades. That was fighting, which is very funny to me, because the Romans killed the Catholics in the first half of Christianity, and then, guess it's okay now, and now we'll fight. So we kill if you're not a Catholic. So they really went both sides. They tried to find the full value of the circle. So when we have fight for religions, many of the wars on the planet, if you boil it down to it, it's fighting because they want more, whether it's based on greed or they're right and you're wrong. Those infidels over there will teach them, and whether it's under the name of God or Allah or my family, whatever you want to say. Go in this country, the Hatfields and the McCoys. Anybody know about them?
Yeah.
Hatfields and the McCoys. George is actually one of those sides. I won't tell you which. But his mother was one of the sides. He grew up in that era. You hate the other people just because that's who they are. You have no idea why. But it's a war that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Same thing with Ireland. North Ireland and Southern Ireland. Fighting as long as I've ever known. As long as I've been alive, I think they've been fighting. It's the North against the South. So wars are fought because of the right to be right. I want to be right. When we think about the Civil War in the United States, Abraham Lincoln, that movie that came out, Lincoln, it was all about the Civil War. The North versus the South. I'm right, you're wrong, no, you're right, I'm wrong. Battle, battle, battle. How many lives were lost? How much blood was shed just for the right to be right? Now, many of you may not have actual bloodshed in your lives, but think about the injury that you cause every time you try to fight. It may not be blood, but hurt feelings. You could squash somebody's light or diminish someone's capacity to move forward. You could prevent somebody from making a contribution because you know more than they do. I know one of the things that I work with is parents often struggle when the children surpass them. It happens. It's always going to happen. Your children are going to surpass you. Well, that was a definitive. I don't want to say that. Most of the time, it happens that children surpass the parents. And when that occurs, parents don't like it. Now, the teenage years, the formative years, this is necessary. The teenagers have to rebel. I worked with a man today whose son, 15 years old, ran away because he didn't want to do his chores. He ran away because he didn't want to wash the dishes, so he ran away. And the way the father handled it was, all right, you want to leave? You don't want to live under these rules? Fine, leave. And so as the kid's packing his bag, he's like, no, you can't take that, that's mine. No, you can't take that, that's mine. And he started taking the stuff out of the kid to teach the kid that everything he had came from his dad. The kid didn't matter, he left anyway. He's just so angry. You know, if you look at the whole picture, the kid's pretty spoiled. He's got an Xbox in his room, and there's internet, and, you know, every game that you could ever imagine he's got. So in an effort of the father to make up for what he didn't have when he was a kid, he overindulged his son, and therefore now they're battling. But the battle is necessary for the son to recognize and start developing his own belief systems. However, his fight, so he left at 15 years old to fight for his rights to not have to wash the dishes. Really, you're going to fight over that. But think about this. Think about the harm that this 15-year-old kid caused. The mother worried up all night. Where's her son? That's her baby. He's gone. She's not one wink of sleep until he finally comes home. And I think he got home around 9 or 10 o'clock this morning is when he finally returned. Without an apology or anything, he just said, oh, I'm home. Okay, so we talked about consequences that he will now enforce on this kid coming back. But that's even something as simple as that. Fighting to not have to do dishes. Really? That's what you're going to waste your energy on or put your energy into? So my suggestion would be for the next week, as you get into your bits and your fighting positions, think about this. Is it worth the battle? Is it worth it to put the energy in? And what kind of contribution are you making to have this fight? Is it really just feeding your ego? Or will it make a change? And what I suspect is many of you will discover that most of the actions that we do on a day in and day in basis do not make a contribution to humanity. It really is more about me or my family. Very few people on a daily basis make a contribution to humanity with the thought of, how is this going to make a contribution to humanity? That's very high level living. Now, that doesn't mean you should walk out of here depressed and go hit the bars and stay there for the next 7 years. But it should inspire you to really be aware. How can you channel your fight for the good of others, to make a contribution? Can you make a contribution? Like, that's a good question to ask yourself. And if you can, where can you make the contribution? Remember, Steve Irwin started in a very small community, and look at the contribution he's made to the planet now. So just a thought process, something to challenge yourself with for the next 2 weeks. So thanks for letting me play with you, and thanks for playing cards with me. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a good night.